Hey everybody, I think we are live now. Welcome back to another episode of On the Verge. And tonight is, it's July 21st. And we are excited tonight about our guests. And usually when I do the intro, we talk a little bit about politics and being a conservative voice. And I think that we are a conservative voice. I think most people know that. But tonight we're not going to talk about politics. Tonight we're going to talk about stuff that's affecting our whole state. And right now, I don't think anybody is unaware of the fact that our state is on fire and it's picking up. And there's plenty of reasons why that's happening, but we do have a lot of really good folks on our side trying to put some of these fires out and keep our folks safe that are out there fighting the fires. So I've had a lot of questions that have come in from constituents and from local crews that are wondering, what the fire dispatch is like and when are they going to be called out and all that kind of stuff. We're going to try to address some of that stuff tonight. Plus, we have some folks on here tonight that are going to give us a rundown of the actual condition of the state, where we're at on, how much fire we actually have on the landscape and kind of where we're headed next. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest tonight. And I'll start out with Mariana. Mariana, you're our state fire marshal. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and thanks for folks that joined today. My name is Mariana Ruiz-Temple, and I serve as the Oregon State Fire Marshal. A little bit about myself is I've been with the Department of State Fire Marshal for 31 years, so going into my 30th fire season, and I just appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk, with everybody and answer any questions that I can. A little bit about myself, I just like to say true Oregonian, native Oregonian, and we have 2 boys, and we spend a lot of time in the woods, so it's something that's special to us, and I'm just glad that I'm in a position that can help, protect Oregonians and Oregon landscapes.
That's great. Thanks for joining us tonight. And Mariana and I got to know each other during the Tyee fire that we had a few years back, and that's I asked her at that time she'd keep me in the loop on fire conditions, and she did a great job of that. I actually got to spend a little time out on the fire lines in between my search and rescue jobs that I had to do. It was an interesting thing, and I really appreciate the work you do, and I know it's a monumental task to try to keep up this time of year. And I know I lose my hair when I get so stressed out, so I hope you don't lose any hair over it. But anyway, thank you for everything you do. I'll go ahead and go to Casey. Casey, you're our state forester, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me here tonight, and I'm real grateful to be here as well. My name is Kacey KC, and I have the great pleasure of serving as Oregon State Forester. A little about me is I am a native Nevadan, so just recently moved here in March. Spent almost 25 years in the field of forestry and wildland fire in the Nevada Division of Forestry. Most recently, the last 8 years as their state forester. So really looking forward to the opportunity to bring my knowledge and expertise both at the national level and at the state level here. We do have a lot of fire in Nevada. It doesn't get a lot of press, but there's a lot of fire there as well. So have spent a lot of time both at the policy level and the implementation level, and really glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us, and we really do appreciate you coming on with us tonight. And again, you're replacing Cal, in the state. You got big shoes to fill, and I know that's a lot of work. And I know that you guys, I think you guys do a great job with what you do. And also, we have with us tonight Representative Dwayne Yunker from Grants Pass. I can't remember the district number. Is it District 3?
3.
Yeah, District 3, Grants Pass area. Representative Yunker is a good friend of mine and a fellow Republican. And Dwayne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been on here before. I am the state rep for most of Josephine County. It's about 80% of it, if you didn't know already, but I think most of your viewers have seen me on here before. I wasn't born here, but I grew up here. I've been here a resident for 43 years. I've never voted in another county, state, or anywhere else, even though I'm from the military. This has always been my home of record. My mom and dad are still living here, and I got my kids here. And I had the honor of sitting down with State Forester Kacey yesterday with some of my folks. And then Virgil called me, and I have not met Mariana before. So I was like, yeah, let's talk. Because obviously it's affects our people down here in Southern Oregon. And I'm not an expert. I've made that very clear, but People want me to be an expert for some reason. And so I have to ask questions. And of course, as a representative, I think we always want to be good stewards of other people's money and that things are happening properly. And if there is things that need fixed, that we're going to talk about them and fix whatever we can fix. I think that is our job as public servants, is to, there's always something we should be working on to make things better. And I think that's the conversation I had yesterday with the director, Casey. And I'm all ears, and I want to learn too what I can for people. So I'm here to ask questions and have a discussion tonight.
Right on. Thanks for joining us, Representative. We do appreciate that. Also, I have my co-host, Trent. I always let Trent say something about himself, so you got 13 seconds. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey everybody, Trent Drake. I am the Douglas County Republican Central Committee Chair, Virgil's campaign manager, and of course we work with a lot of the other guys in town, our commissioners and stuff like that.
Right on. And I am, of course, your House District 2 state representative. So it's always nice with this talk show, podcast, whatever you call it, that we're able to get some
The
of
Osmonds are coming on next,
Yeah, something like that. We're able usually to get folks that are kind of the players, the people that can actually make change happen, not just state representatives, but obviously agency heads and other folks at different areas to come on it. And it gives some transparency and a little bit of knowledge to the folks that are watching. And we always appreciate that. And certainly I'm looking for the numbers to increase tonight on our audience, but as many questions and as many things that I've had to field in the last week, if those folks aren't on here watching what's happening tonight, then clearly they're not engaged, and they should be, because these are the people that answer those questions. So with that, Casey, would you like to start out and give us a little bit of a state of the state and tell us what's happening?
Sure. Yeah. I will start by saying that we were worried about the fire season this year. All the predictions that were coming in, looking at the weather modeling and the fuel modeling and our fuel moistures, were showing that we were going to have an above average fire season. We didn't get the winter snow that we were anticipating at the higher elevations. We didn't get all the rain that we were anticipating across other parts of the state. We have very dry, receptive fuel. And so we got a little reprieve. We thought it was coming in early June. We were very worried about that into mid-June and later. So we got a little reprieve until into July. So as of right now, we've had about just over 1,000 fires burning about 415,000 acres across the state. Just to give you some context on that, our 10-year average for the year is approximately 2,000 fires and 660,000 acres. So we're on target to hit or exceed, unfortunately, those targets. Nobody's hoping for that. But we are susceptible. One of the things I will say is we're having fire both at high elevation and at lower elevation, and it is moving. It's moving quickly. It is highly resistant to the suppression tactics that we are putting in place. It's wanting to take off and run. The fuels were about a month and a half earlier than we would have anticipated because of the dryness. So in an effort to prepare for that, we did bring on some preparedness resources early. And often we're able to do that through the great support of the legislature and the ability to bring assets in early. And our staff were trained and prepared across OSFM and ODF to be ready. I've got about 800 trained personnel in ODF, both incident management team and firefighter assets. So we are currently out. We have 3 incident management teams ourselves at ODF. Mariana has 3 additional incident management teams. We'll go into that. All 6 are deployed today across the state. We've got about 7,257 personnel assigned across 25 active incidents right now. And it is a very complicated system of Oregon ODF lands that we're protecting, and we are ordering out of an ODF ordering system. When we come into the cross section with our federal partners, both the I get it wrong every time, the U.S. Wildfire Service. It's very close to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and our interior partners and our agriculture partners. We go into a separate ordering system, and then we roll up into a national ordering system, and we'll go very in depth into that later. But that's a general overview. Marianne, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question too before just in regards to that? I don't, when you say you have a team, a management team, what does that consist of? Is that, 10 people, 20, 100?
That's a great question. Incident management teams are scaled to the complexity of the incident, so it's not like a number of people, but we've got an incident commander, we've got planning section, ops section chiefs. It's really all of the backbone behind all of the assets that you see fighting fire out there. So you've got people in there making sure that we're running plans, that we've got safety coordinators, that we've got all of the division supervisors, that we're mapping where everybody's doing work, that we know where everybody is out there on the fire. So the incident command structure is really the backbone. They're providing the meals, they're providing the showers, they're providing the space to sleep every night. So incident command teams, no fire happens without the backbone of an incident management team. It's the finance folks, all the people checking to make sure that we've got all the paperwork and contracts in place to pay people as they come and as they go, checking in, checking out to make sure that every resource that comes in ends up going home that night or whenever they go home. So the backbone behind all the firefighters out there on the line.
So Casey, thank you so much for that explanation. And I think one thing, we all understand, and I've been on many wildfires myself in a different kind of search and rescue missions. But one of the things that we train for, I have to go to training every year, just like the firefighters do, to make sure that I'm safe. And one of the things that I think is quite a misnomer is people don't understand. It's not like you just make a phone call and you get a bunch of volunteers to go out and throw water on a fire. That's not how it works. I mean, you have to have eyes in the skies. People have to know what's happening with the fire and when it's moving, because fire can overtake you very, very fast. I've seen it happen. And when I say fast, faster than you can run, or sometimes even faster than you can drive. So I think that I get why you would have an incident management team, because I think that there needs to be that responsibility. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of injuries on fires. I mean, we get occasionally some, but nothing, at least knock on wood. We don't have a lot of major injuries that I've seen in the last several years, and I think that's attributed to the fact that you have good management. So thank you for that. And now I will let Mariana go. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but please go ahead and tell us.
Yeah. So, Representative, I just want to give a high-level state of the state. I think we were all tracking the lightning storm that we saw come in last week. Between Oregon and Washington, we had over 8,200 strikes. And that lightning storm was highly, highly effective. And it started the majority of the fires that we saw come on right after that. We have about 80 fires around the state of Oregon that are at the level of being tracked at the center. And I'll just walk through the ones that we're focused on primarily. And in Central Oregon, it's I'm going to get this wrong. I say Akawa and others say Akawa Butte fire, which is burning outside of Sisters. That's around 10,400 acres. It's about 3% contained. It is in pretty much in the same footprint that we saw last year on the Flat Fire and the 2 years before that in the Grandview. Actively firefighting right now going on in that Stevens Canyon area that has a tendency to draw that closer to the city of Sisters. So that's one of our number one priorities this evening. We're in unified command with ODF Team 2 and the OSFM Red Team. They're also managing the Brewer Fire, which is burning near and continues to move nearer to the town of Prineville, Oregon. And that fire is around 25,000 acres, 1% contained. It is running, torching, and is in the right fuel loads either to continue east. And if that continues to go down south on that southeast corner, that's where the area of concern is for OSFM. We're in unified command again with ODF. And we do have protection of the community of Prineville and the structures in that fire district. And that's Central Oregon. There's a smattering of other fires that are coming on in addition to those two, but those two are the ones that we're talking about currently.
So, Chief, I think that something probably worth mentioning is the mission that Oregon State Fire has compared to the mission that Oregon Department of Forestry has. It's two separate missions. Could you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, so the Department of the State Fire Marshal uses and mobilizes the Oregon Conflagration Act. And what that act allows and requires is a plan where local fire chiefs, fire defense board chiefs have the ability to reach into the fire service when they believe their capacity has been exceeded or will be exceeded. And so in a lot of cases like the Evans fire, which we're seeing in Jackson County, the Tyee Ridge fire, those systems exist so that that fire chief can lean into that state mutual aid system. And we do that, like I said, we have about 80 fires currently in Oregon. OSFM is about, I think, on 5 fires. And that's because we prioritize communities, requests of local fire chiefs, and focusing on structural protection. And so our mission is to bring that asset, and we coordinate with ODF and the federal government on all the different assets that come in. And our mission is protection of communities, but really integrating, unifying to create a stronger system for that fire that we happen to be on in conjunction, in this case with ODF. I just wanted to highlight one thing, if I will. I don't need to go through all these fires, but first of all, if anyone's watching from Douglas Fire and all the firefighters out there and contractors and crews, I just want to say thank you so far for what has been a dynamic and challenging fire season. Casey and I also have concern over this week. We expect to see lightning coming in South Central and Southeast Oregon tonight. We're going to see increased temperatures in the Columbia Basin. We're going to see more lightning coming into portions of the Cascades in Southeast Oregon. And then we expect to see what's most concerning Friday and Saturday, an erratic wind condition that we do have concerns about either starting new fires or the impact of that with existing fires. So I just want to highlight that although we just went through this significant event, there is another event coming through that we're equally trying to anticipate and ensure that we're prepared for as well.
Great, crazy times. I do have a quick question, and I'll let Representative Yunker, I'm sure he wants to say a few things, but one of the things that I noticed on the Tyee fire, and this is a question more in coordination wise, and I had never seen this before until that fire, was insurance companies have their own engines on the fire based at people's houses. Now, I guess the question I have is that something, do they go through you guys to get into those positions? I mean, are they coordinating with the state fire marshal or the Department of Forestry?
They don't coordinate and they don't mobilize through OSFM or ODF or frankly any agency. We started to see them come on the landscape around 2010, 2011, and it's insurance companies that are purchasing their own engines and force. You see really coordinated response now, unlike what we've seen before. And early on, we were contemplating how to integrate with them. Now they come to every single fire and they're considered a cooperator. And we just want to make sure that they're safe and that they understand if we call for evacs or retreats, that they have the ability to talk to us on comms. But they're not part of our asset. We don't order them. They are mobilized as an independent insurance contractor.
Yeah, and you probably know something about that because you're an insurance agent.
Yeah.
But I remember pulling up to this house. I think I was riding with the sheriff actually, and we pulled up to this house, and here's this white engine sitting at the house with no markings on it, and I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And there was a couple of guys out there cleaning gutters and cutting brush back from the house, and I'm like, oh. And so then it was explained to me what it was, which I mean, I'm not against it. I think it's probably a good thing. The more assets you can put on a fire, as long as it's safe, the more assets, the better. Representative Yunker, I can't believe you've been this quiet this long. You got to have something to say.
Well, I did have a question, but she just answered it when she was the difference between the forester and the state fire marshal. I think that a question I should ask is because it's been asking me by some constituents is we see a lot. And I talked to Director Casey and some of my people yesterday. We see a lot of fire departments that are getting into the fire business and getting grants and stuff to buy stuff. And it seems like if they're getting grants, it probably should be sticking to their home area, but we're seeing them from outside the area more now versus our local assets that could be doing some of the same, filling, engines. And I'm not in this business, so my knowledge is very simple. And if you start using acronyms and stuff like that, I won't know, or I don't think the audience will know. So I told Casey yesterday, we can't use acronyms around me. If we're military jargon, we're great because I know those ones. But can you talk about that? And and it seems like there's a lot. The director too. There's a lot more people in the business now that maybe we should be not having some of them in the business. And just give me your aspects on that as a state fire marshal.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. We definitely have those questions that come up a lot. I'm going to back up a little bit to the Conflagration Act. That is the state statute that directs our agency to create a plan to ensure that there is a fire service mutual aid system, essentially. That law has been on the books since the early 50s, and it actually came out of the Civil Defense Act, which, if you kind of go back into history, was really contemplating impacts to World War II and potential for impacts on the West Coast. And so it's kind of born out of that methodology, or what was occurring at that time. What's transpired, though, is if you read the Conflagration Act, it directs every fire agency that has more than one engine to mobilize to help protect other communities at the request of the local fire service. And so that is the system that we manage. When a local fire chief in Evans Valley or Shady Cove has exceeded their capacity, they go to the county. And when the county has exceeded their capacity for structural protection and protecting of their own communities that are within their jurisdiction, then they activate the Conflagration Act, and that's where we mobilize resources. I will say that I know that 31 years ago when I entered this biz, I was not responding to fires the way I am now, and we're seeing more fires, bigger, more complex, and in and around communities more and more. And so I think the citizens that pay into those taxes at the local level do have, kind of the idea that there is going to be some level of wildland urban interface protection. And because of that, I think that you'll see that when fires impact communities more and more, we use that system to mobilize for the structural protection side. So in a case like this dynamic season, we are moving resources, in central or south central. We move Douglas County. That's not always perfect, because we also know that your Douglas County may experience the same type of weather that East Evans is also experiencing. So we do bring in resources from Lane or Deschutes. We're constantly monitoring weather impacts and monitoring where we might be able to get the closest resources, but also the healthiest resources that are not having the same conditions. So that's the system that we mobilize for the structural and community protection. We don't have assets and we don't mobilize to the other 75 fires that are really mainly in our wildland areas. It's really in protection of communities at the request of local fire chiefs.
And
Gotcha.
if Representative, if I might add, on our job at Oregon Department of Forestry is really wildland fires. We are charged with protection of the lands which ODF owns and operates, so 17 million acres across the state, and then through agreement, some federal lands and other areas across the state. We are really wildland firefighters. We don't go into structures. We're not trained to be structural firefighters. Historically, when wildland fires were really wildland fires, they stayed in the range or in the mountains or in the hills. We fought those without structural firefighters. When the community started to move out into what they were calling, I won't use the acronym, the wildland urban interface, where we started to interface with those homes and these natural vegetated areas or even agricultural fields, we really started to see those impacts change. And so it brought a whole different aspect to the wildland firefighting arena. So our job as wildland firefighters, we go when the bell rings, and we stay until actually that fire is, we call it contained or controlled, we have to safely say that that's not going to jump those lines of containment, and we feel like it's going to be safe in that box. And so from a wildland firefighting perspective, there's multiple different ordering systems. Starting, if it starts on, it's all dependent upon whose land on which the fire starts. If it starts on ODF's land, ODF does a very similar process to what Mariana just said. We order locally. We have 6,847 local contractors signed up in our IRA. That's the incident resource agreements. Those are basically individual pieces of equipment or people that can come help us from the contract world. We also have craft and aviation on contract. We have our own staff engines that are rolling. So we're running through our immediate area first. If it starts on federal land, it's going to go through a federal ordering system, which means you have to be qualified and certified to the national standards. Those are slightly different than some of what the ODF standards are. And so a different system, very similar. One thing about the way we all work together is the feds do have access to our contracting systems when we're working jointly together, and we have access to their Viper system. The Viper, I don't know what that acronym stands for, but it is their federal contracting system. And so we have access to each other's systems. So part of some of the confusion that comes up is how things get ordered. When ODF is solely ordering, we're ordering closest available necessities. The incident commander on the fire is telling us, I need this many engines and I need this many crews, and we're looking for that out of the contract world or out of our own world. And then like any system in a natural disaster, we are not staffed to actually be able to respond to this amount of fire. So we're meant to be able to expand and contract into a national ordering system. So then it starts, when we exhaust local resources, it goes up into the GAC, the general area of coordination, the Pacific Northwest. So we're looking at assets in Washington and Oregon. We've got state-to-state agreements that allow us to bring in state, it came out of the Civil Defense Act as well. We are allowed to order from other state agencies in partner states. We have individual state agreements. We have compacts that allow us to order in even all the way from Canada. And then we get into the national ordering system. So things are coming from multiple directions, and they're all kinds of different things. So you might see Florida license plates here. In fact, the team transitioning at the end of the week to the East Evans Creek Fire is a team coming out of Florida. We don't have any local resources, and we need to, our team's running up on their 14th day. They need to get their required rest and relaxation to be ready again to go back out on fires here. So we have an agreement with Florida. Their fire season is different than ours. They come on earlier and they stop earlier. So we often bring them in and they bring us there. So the system has a lot of things. And one thing to remember that we talked kind of at length about, all states are not created equally. Many states operate differently. Here you have a really great and robust contractor system. In Nevada, where I just came from, they didn't have that. So we relied on local government fire protection districts to get those wildland certifications. And where Mariana mobilizes for mutual aid here, we, as the Division of Forestry, there mobilized for mutual aid. So it's slightly different. So you would see structural entities with wildland engines responding to wildland fire, but they weren't responding as a structural entity. And in fact, you see them here in Oregon. They have been here in strike teams of engines. I believe a crew of ours is coming up today, of Nevada's is coming up today. So they're kind of moving all over. Assets are meant to come and go. And one thing to clarify too in my statement is when I say we're exhausting all assets, it doesn't mean that we can utilize all of our contracted engines or all of our contracted crews. The fire's doing the ordering. There's only so many of those things that, one, are useful on each fire because of terrain. And then two, we have the necessary safety overhead to operate those systems. So sometimes we run out of that overhead before we have the opportunity to order other resources in. For example, division supervisors running or task force leaders running strike teams of engines. So
I got something.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Well, she kind of hit on a little bit level, but I was thinking, for a lot of people that are watching, not everybody's in the firefighting business. So I have two questions. Can you expand on the supervision level that you were just talking about? That was one of my questions, so people understand why you can't just order 1,000 firefighters, because your supervisor level cannot do that. I think that's really important, because I didn't know that until we talked yesterday. And then can you talk about ODF's amount of land they kind of oversee in Oregon versus the federal land? Because like Josephine County is like 70% government land. I think that's a bigger picture of people can see how much land that ODF is really overlooking versus the federal side. And just for the non-people that really are not educated in this, that are paying attention today.
Yeah, so the supervision levels that I was speaking of, it's back to the national certification or training levels. It's a span of control issue from a knowing where everybody's at and knowing, giving that clear and safe direction to bring everyone home. So you need strike team leaders to be leading your engines. You need division supervisors managing all of those assets of. They're breaking each fire into smaller divisions for a span of control, making sure that they know where every firefighter is, what line they're cutting, where the dozers are. And that's a safety issue, just making sure that we have oversight. Unfortunately, over history and in early firefighting times, we learned the lesson the hard way many times with fatalities. And every one of those fatality incidents, we study and learn how we can do better, and those came from primarily communications issues and lack of clear direction. And so there is an oversight structure and a need, and that's the other piece. It's like, I know that everyone thinks, I could throw all the crews at this, or I could throw all of the engines at this, or all the aircraft at this, and there are reasons why some of those things don't work. Road access for engines, water supply for other things. Aircraft can't fly when we've got, heavy smoke or strong winds. So ICs are having to think about all of those things. Incident commanders, they're having to think about all of those things. What's the utility of this? Because though we always say we're not fighting fire with a checkbook, we're not, and in our initial thought, worried about funding. We are always have funding at the back of our minds. We want to be judicious with taxpayer dollars. We want to ensure that everyone out there is working and working hard. And we want to ensure that we have the oversight and the communication structures to be able to support them and the teams out there. So when you start to get to one thing I didn't bring up in the oversight is preparedness level 5 at the national level. It means that we're getting stretched pretty thin with that overhead. So though there may be assets available at the local level, engines, crews, whatever, the overhead is out, and all of those things are working. There's sustained fire in multiple geographic areas with potential of more fire to come, and resources are very limited. When we get into that, and that is true in Oregon as well, then we have to start prioritizing those fires. So when you get a lightning bus that comes through and you got 71 new starts, our dispatchers and our coordination groups and our leadership are coming together to say, okay, we've got enough assets. We've got primary concerns in these 10 areas because it's an imminently threatening structures. In these other areas, we think it's going to stay a little more, so we're going to put our assets over here. It's not that the tactic on those fires is not full suppression. It is. Every fire is full suppression. It's just that when we start to have to decide we don't have the assets to put on every fire. And so what you saw and what you're seeing out there right now is, you know, we went out there and we're trying to attack every fire. Some fires, we moved assets off of one fire to go more aggressively attack another fire. We had to break some of these fires up into different teams from a management perspective because the span, either by distance or by assets, were getting too big for those incident commanders. So these are the fly decisions that are being constantly trying to decipher and move. And when we start to get to an Oregon PL5, we're looking at all of the Oregon assets. When you're getting up to a preparedness level 5 at the nation's level, everything that comes out that's in the federal national ordering system is being prioritized. And so if something comes open, like a Florida hand crew comes open, if Oregon's fires are number 1 or 2 or 3 on that prioritization, those assets will come to us. If California's got the Palisades fire, it's probably going there. So these are so many levels of prioritization that are going on across multiple different agencies at multiple different levels, but all of it is working. It sounds crazy and hard to manage, but all of it is working in coordination and conjunction. So we're all talking, we all know where everything's at. We kind of know how things will move. We know the priorities. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah.
So let me throw a question out there. We're getting some questions finally in from our audience, and one of the questions, and I think it's probably more of a Casey question, but the question is, what are we going to do about the landscape after the fire so that we don't end up looking like the federal lands look like, especially in Douglas County right now, with everything that burned in the Arch Creek fire that was on federal lands is still just standing dead, which is of course a hazard in itself. So what is the state forester going to do about that?
So the immediate after all fires and before suppression, so before we even leave a fire, we have to repair suppression damage repair. It's part of a, taking care of the dozer blade, the widths of dozer blade we put out there. So we go in and make sure that we rehab and repair the roads and all of those things before a fire ever says we're out. After that, we're looking at emergency stabilization concerns. Where are we going to have, and once the vegetation has been cleaned off in a fire, the rain that comes is not going to be held by anything, and we're going to have the second disaster, which is flood usually. So we're looking at where are we going to put in emergency stabilization, measures. Sometimes those are water bar, like sometimes we're directionally felling trees to make sure that we're holding those landscapes. There's a lot of tactics we take for that. And then we go into long-term rehab and revegetation. So it depends on which areas you're talking about, how we might handle that. If we're in, a sagebrush ecosystem where we may also be applying herbicide, because the first thing that's going to come back usually is some kind of invasive annual grass that's going to be highly volatile and change your fire cycle to an annual fire cycle. If you're talking up in the trees, we might be looking at a large scale replanting. And one thing I will say about rehabilitation, that too has changed over the years. Historically, we would fly seed over all 100,000 acres of any fire, hoping that it would take. And now we're really looking at the areas where we're going to have the highest success. And so we might do pockets of planting, and then some areas of hand seeding, and some areas of aerial seeding, and some areas of herbicide application. Because what we're really trying to get to is successfully getting back either natives or non-natives that can give us a stronghold before those invasive species to get back into a regular fire cycle. So it's really, really critically important that we make sure that rehab is just as important as the mitigation we do ahead of fires.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think what people in Douglas County see is they drive up to North Umpqua and they see all that federal land that really didn't get taken care of. And there's not that much state lands. I think there's only about 8,000 acres of state lands in Douglas County, and a lot of that I think is the Elliott. They're over in that area. So what happens here isn't indicative of what the state. I think the state does. I've been on fires, and I know when the state shows up, things happen, and it's good stuff. I know when the feds show up, everything goes on pause. I mean, I hate to say that. I'm not picking on the feds, but I've seen it go on pause. I mean, Archer Creek was a great example. I watched that fire go on pause, and I watched a lot of crews that were, the initial attack crews going home when I felt like they should be going into the fire, but it was different management, at that point. But then I watched the Taif fire, and I thought the state, especially with the structural protection, I thought amazing job was done there, and hats off to Mariana and her team. It was just handled really well, and I appreciate that. I got to go to Trent because Trent hadn't said anything tonight, and I know he's got something he's got to say. So,
well, I guess obviously the subject tonight is fighting fires and what we're doing to do it the right way, and obviously there's an economic function to it. There's the management function. I guess my question would be to either of you, in the non-fire season, what is being planned, or is there a plan for fire prevention and mitigation of our forests?
Yeah, so I could start, and then Mariana, our agencies are very joined at the hip, if you haven't noticed, both from a suppression response perspective and how do we mitigate. So we have prevention messaging that goes out jointly. We're always trying, 70% of the starts of fires are human caused. So we're always trying to hit how they're starting and why they're starting and educate. But that's one of the biggest things that we learned is we can't suppress our way out of this challenge. We have to actively manage all of our ecosystems out there. So putting in fuel breaks, working with utilities, working with our federal partners. So we have to pick those areas of highest concern and really work on the community. How are we going to harden the community, which is from Mariana's perspective. And we're looking at how are we going to make these forests, fire is natural in all of these ecosystems. And we, because of many, many years of overgrowth or under management, and there's a combination of many things happening. It's warmer out there, things are growing differently. There's all kinds of issues that are happening. And so we're having to look at making sure that we get those fuel breaks in the right places, that we're thinning forests or we are harvesting trees at the right ratios and in the right places to slow fire as it moves through those. So a lot of that's what we do. That's why forestry agencies, the federal agencies with land management, we were all foresters. Not all foresters, because not all forests are the same, but foresters, range cons, ecosystem managers before we were wildland firefighters. The wildland fires just became the largest threat to most of our ecosystems, particularly in the Western U.S.
So Casey, I want to pause just for a second. We have a local podcast here that's not my podcast, and I heard some folks on that podcast who I completely disagree with, but I want your opinion on this question. They said that lightning fires burn themselves out, and they are not the reason why we have forest fires. These particular people said the forest fires in Oregon are all caused from plantation forests because they're not because the timber companies. I know I'm going way off on a tangent here, but I listened to this podcast on I think it was on Sunday, and I was like, are you kidding me? But there is a group of people that feel like lightning fires should just be let burn because they automatically put themselves out. I want you to comment on that.
Many of the fires Mariana just mentioned that are the top priority for suppression action today were lightning caused fires. They don't put themselves out. Sometimes they are at high enough elevation where we also can't put them out, or other aspects. Maybe it's in a wilderness and we may not be able to get in there, but they don't put themselves out. Sometimes the snow will put them out. Sometimes we will put them out. And historically speaking, Though the larger number of fire starts are human, traditionally the larger acres burned come from lightning fires. So we can predict better every day where lightning's coming and where we can pre-position assets. What we can never predict is where the other fires are going to start. And so that's what causes us fits and starts, because we never know where the chain's going to be dragging, or the cigarette's going to fling out the window, or whatever else. But no, it's we've got to actively engage in all of those fires, and mainly, to Mariana's earlier point, we've got a lot of people living in these interfaces, and we've got interspersed homes in all of those areas. And so if we're going to truly protect the people and the ecosystems of Oregon, we've got to actively fight fire. And that would be human and human caused.
That's exactly the response I expected, and that's coming from the professionals. So I appreciate that. I just, there are so many opinions on what happens with wildfires, in Oregon, particularly around Douglas County, because I will tell you, when I was a kid, and I mean, I grew up right here. I was born in Roseburg. We didn't have a lot of wildfires, and there's a segment of the population that thinks that it's all caused by climate change. But there's also, in my opinion, and they're going to have to work really hard to change my opinion on this, I think our forests now, and particularly our federal forests, we're not logging, we're not managing them, we're not taking out the smaller trees, we're not taking out just clear cutting a unit on its own takes out some brush, right? And then spraying after the fact. We're not doing all that. So when the fires get started now, for number one, we don't have the initial attack crews. And I remind people all the time that loggers were the people to put the fires out. They may have started a lot of the fires, but they're also the people that they already had a cat on scene, or they had a water truck on scene, and they put the fires out. And those folks are not in the woods anymore, and they're not doing the mitigation work that naturally comes with managing the forest and taking timber. But I don't want to take away from Mariana. We got some time here. Go ahead, Mariana. You were getting ready to comment.
I was just going to add, Casey talked about mitigation, and I appreciate the question about prevention. We work around what we call the national cohesive strategy, and that is safe and effective response, which is the suppression side, fire adapted communities, and resilient landscapes. And when all three of those come together, where they're equally funded or they're equally addressed, you have a system that's able to live with fire. And so in 2020, we all kind of experienced 2020, certainly on the west side, border to border fire. And it did start new conversations in our legislature, and there were new conversations about how to invest in prevention. Yes, that's messaging, but it's also putting dollars to people on the ground to do mitigation work, whether that's in our wildlands or in and around communities. And the conversation also then starts to talk with, what do we as Oregonians, what do we as our own taxpayers do to protect our own properties? And so you see more conversations around defensible space, or preparing your property to live with fire so fire can come in and move through. I remember, when I first started here, I wasn't even thinking that. I wasn't experiencing wildfire like this, and I didn't realize I had a role in protecting my property. And that is some of the things we're saying, because we know that the cheapest fire for us as taxpayer is a fire that doesn't start. And so prevention, human caused fires, and what we can do to protect our own property, I think is what you're going to see. It's a generational shift. And I get it. You should be at my Thanksgiving table. There's every opinion about wildfire, every opinion about how to manage wildfire, every opinion about suppression. It is a complicated issue, and Oregonians are finding it out the hard way. And, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to talk, because it's complex. And I will be remiss, because you keep bringing up Tyree. I do want to give a shout out to DFPA. They were there in unified command with us, ODF. And from somebody that protects communities, seeing the kind of work that ODF and DFPA do, that aggressive initial attack and aggressive attack, and doing that together is what does save Oregonians. Not everywhere, not all the time, when we're dealing with dynamic situations like this. Across Oregon, we've already lost 14 primary homes, people's homes, and about 70 structures. I expect by morning it'll be more. And so I just want to give a shout out to the folks that are on the line, and to your own systems that you have in Douglas County, because top notch for sure.
Hey, Virgil, can I ask a simple question?
Yeah.
It's to Mariana, and my question, you kind of hit it a little bit, but I think since we're on a podcast talking to people that are watching here, and I still see it today in Josephine County, I drive by houses in the rural area, and they have bushes and trees and firewood stacked against their house, and I hate to say this, but it's kind of their fault too. There should be some homeowner responsibility. And can you talk to, because you're having to react to go save a home, but there is some homeowner responsibilities. And can you talk to that would help you guys save structures?
Yeah, Representative, I appreciate that question. There are trade-offs in fire suppression. We have to make tough decisions about whether we could defend a certain structure. And just today on another fire, we lost a home because it was not defendable. It was unsafe. They had bushes. Their egress and ingress was not something that we were going to be able to save. But to your point, we also have people in Oregon, and some don't even realize this when they purchase homes, that they're living outside of a fire district. They live in unprotected areas. And a lot of times they just assume when you call 911 on a wildfire initial attack, you're going to get somebody, but we choose to live in places like this. And to exactly your point, then what do we as Oregonians do so that we are not just expecting people to come and put your fire out, which is very costly. And so defensible space, taking care of your landscapes. And if you go to the Oregon Department of State Fire Marshal's website, just Google defensible space. We do free defensible space assessments. We provide education and training on what you can do. And lastly, it is all of our responsibility. Wildfire is the one natural hazard that we actually have a shot at mitigating, unlike a hurricane, unlike a tornado. And it starts with Oregonians. And what are we going to do so that we're not seeing the insurance and the mortgage crisis that we're seeing in California? We're starting to see it now, but it's a collective. Josephine County is a really good example where they don't have necessarily the same fire department protection systems, right? And we have a lot of people living in the unprotected, and that's a trade-off to our county commissioners. If they're going to make the decision to call for conflagration, to call for your local mutual aid, your local fire department to come and help in those areas. So I love that conversation. And I'd love for folks to take a look at that material we have and ask for a free defensible space assessment. Also, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I'd like to address that. As someone in the insurance industry, and a major portion of my business is homeowners, there's all this educate. Understand the insurance industry in Oregon is taking an amazingly aggressive stance. Every client I sit down with, I go to their house, I look at it, and I go, your tree's too close to your house. You need to cut it back. These bushes need to be cut back. At the end of the day, and with what Dwayne said, it's whether they'll do it or not. If your firewood's up against your house, why are you doing that? Especially if you're in the outlying rural areas near those BLM or state or federal lands, you need to be more wary of what you're doing. Where is your water located? Do you have a hydrant available that you can grab in an instant that you can get the totality of your home with? We have these conversations all the time, and a lot of it boils down to getting that message to those homeowners. And I really feel responsible. However, I will tell you, in the Archer Creek fire, I had a home in Glide. The back of his house got scorched. When he was told to leave, he goes, what do I do? And I said, put a sprinkler on your roof and leave.
As long as they don't turn the electricity off to your pump.
They didn't, yeah. Thank goodness. But it did. His house got a little scorched, but he also, you could see where it came to the water line and stopped. Yeah. I mean, people, if you're listening out there and your house is like this, think about it. Give me a call. I'll give you a free assessment with nothing other than here's what you need to do. Yeah. And if people out there are saying, well, there's no education, there's a lot of education. Listen to your insurance agent. He really has been trained to help you do that, especially in these outlying rural areas.
Well, I think it's important to, and you guys touched on it when somebody made a comment on here. Susan made the comment that you are your own first responder.
Yeah.
When it comes to wildland, interface, and I think that understanding things. I mean, honestly, until the Archer Creek fire, I never even thought about the fact that when the electricity got shut off to the North Umpqua, it turned off all of the pumps that people were pumping their wells and their rivers. And so even though I know when I did the assessment on it was about 3 days after the fire started, when I did the assessment on some of the property, there were sprinklers that were set up and they ran until the pump shut off, and then that was it, and everything burned to the ground. So think about those kind of things. I think it's super important. I want to touch on something other. In the legislature, I think we passed a bill for about 85 million or 80 million, maybe it's 83 million. I don't remember the numbers, but to help with firefighting. And I think that was in this biennium. I'm not sure if maybe it was just for the year. But we also passed a tax that was a Zen tax. And I thought that Zen tax was supposed to produce in the first biennium about 65 million that was going to be put toward, am I wrong on that? Mariana, please comment.
So House Bill 3940 required the Department of Forestry and Department of State Fire Marshal to put together a group to take a look at how are we going to fund wildfire mitigation. So exactly what Rep Yunker, you were talking about, how do we invest there? The group came up with about 71 different options. And you can imagine lots of creative ideas, and where it ultimately landed with partners and legislators were two taxes: 20% of the interest of the rainy day fund, and imposing a new tax on Zen tax. So it's called the Zen tax, the pouches, if you will. And at that time, the forecasting was around $20 million for the Zen tax. So about $42 million biannually to OSFM. And the way the two taxes, and again, we're just in the first year and a half of this, so we're paying attention to how that is. And it was really around mitigation. How are we going to mitigate to get out of the ER, which is essentially where we are in Oregon, get into the prevention side? And both of those funding sources provide 2/3 funding to community wildfire risk reduction and 1/3 to landscape resilience, and partly because ODF already also has another funding source for landscape resilience too. So 42 million this biennium between those two taxes to community wildfire risk reduction, and another 20-ish million to Casey and her team for landscape in addition to what they have. And so we'll see how those continue to forecast out. I pay attention to them monthly because those are things that we are mandated to get to the ground. And so far they're holding up to what they forecasted, but we continue to take a look at it. Again, the Zen tax came into effect on the 1st of this year. So we're only 6 months into it.
Yeah, hasn't had time to raise a lot of money. Okay, I don't see, and I want to say thank you to Senator Brock Smith for being on here. And Senator Brock Smith has been a major asset for helping with not only mitigation, but getting dollars to your guys' organizations as well. And I think most of your rural legislators are more than happy to help out in any way we can. I know I am, and fire, not just prevention, but a fast attack. I know, and I also want to give a shout out to our commissioners, because they work in tandem with Douglas Forest Protection, with DFPA. When fires start, I mean, I don't think you'll find too many fire meetings that you won't see Commissioner Freeman attending. And so kind of like I always liken our commissioners to sales managers. Their job is not to do the job of the salesperson. Their job is to get all the roadblocks out of the way so the salesperson can do their job. And I think our commissioners do a fantastic job of that, and I'm thankful for that. And listen, that's not just hearsay. That's fact. I've been on the fires with them. I've been on the fires with Mariana as well, and also with the Sheriff's Department. I mean, I've been on a lot of wildfires, and I know the dynamics change quick. Communications are super important, and and the list goes on. Okay, so I don't see the questions that I thought I was going to see tonight, which is kind of disappointing, because I was really hoping that we would address them. So I'm going to go ahead and ask one of the questions, and then I don't want to go too long tonight on everybody's time, and your time's valuable. But all right, let's say I'm a local contractor. I've got an excavator and a bulldozer, maybe a long logger, and I'm on the Viper list. I'm on the state fire list, and I want to be dispatched on a fire. And we have a local fire. Let's just use the Evans Creek for example now. And so, what do I have to do to get dispatched to that fire? What makes me an asset that you guys would call? I guess I'm asking for the state side, not the Fed side. What do I have to do? Because that's the questions that I get continuously, is why are we sitting on the sidelines?
Yeah, I can take that one. Answer the phone. That's the that's the first one. We come out if it's an ODF fire and ODF is the ordering entity, then we're going into that list. So they do have to get signed up into our incident resource agreements. It's open one time a year. We extended that opening this year. We have more contractors than we've ever seen in that list. I think since we had 2,000 in about 2022, we have almost 7,000 today. And so that list has been growing. We've been putting contractors in the system. So we're calling, because of that, we did, Representative Yunker and I were talking when we are going to have to probably look at how we prioritize that. We have more, we didn't have the issue of this many assets in the system before. And so before it was, we'd call everyone in the system and almost everyone went. Now we have a lot of people in the system. So we're going to have to look at a way to evaluate and prioritize. Maybe it's a rotation. That's what we do in the fire world. If our team's up, then we're first out. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to be listening to all of you as we move into that process. It's a good problem to have. More contractors than you need is not a bad problem. And so we will start calling basically, and sometimes you aren't like if we call a contractor and they're not available, they got a job, then we go to the next one on the list. In the Fed system, it's very similar. Usually in the federal system, you have to mark yourself as available. Sometimes contractors don't have that capability. So they're going to start calling off of a rotational list. And then the difference usually between a federal contract and a state contract is the Fed contract, you may not end up being locally sourced. If the number one priority for the fire is in California, they may call you and see if you're ready to go to California. Whereas we're calling you either for a local area or somewhere in Oregon. So that's really how it is. So you got to get signed up. You gotta give us a way to contact you.
Yeah. So one of the another question that I get, and I guess it's more of a comment, but I have people all say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get on a fire and I'm going to get paid $2,000 a day just to sit there and wait, just to be on hold." I don't know how that works. I do know there's long loggers that were put on. I don't think it was the Arch Creek, but it was a different fire, that were getting paid, and lowboy drivers that were getting paid just to sit on standby, and they were getting paid a lot, like $2,500, $2,800 a day, just to be there and not necessarily do anything. Now, I'm also a business owner, so I understand that just being there, I mean, somebody's getting paid to be there. So, somebody's also, there's fuel involved, there's equipment wear and tear and all that other stuff involved. So it's not like it's a $2,800 a day profit. But what do I tell somebody when, is that happening? And do you guys have a system to audit to make sure that the money is being spent on a state level, it's being spent correctly, so that we don't just, throw money in the wind? Because, and I won't even get into the whole fire camp thing when I see like crates and crates of Gatorade and water that end up not being used, right? I mean, there's lots of, I think it's just a natural thing. You're going to have some waste when you're doing a response. But do you guys have a system? And I guess when I say that, that's a question for both Mariana and Casey. Is there a system to go in and audit to make sure that we're doing what's best for the public dollars?
Yeah, we're looking at that every year. And one of the things I will say is that is one of the questions I can say I get most often. And some of that is misunderstanding. There are two things that we do. One of it is pre-position assets. So if we're looking at a lightning bus that we know is coming through, and we are either short-staffed or we're very concerned about how the fuels will take that a strike of lightning, we may call assets in to be ready. And that means that they are sitting. They've usually in their contract given us a pre-position rate. It's whatever that rate is, and we are paying them to be ready for that initial aggressive attack. We have that. The national level does the same thing. They'll pre-position if we're out of crews in the western part of the U.S. and there are crews available in the southern part of the U.S., they may bring them over in times of high severity. So that is one thing. the second thing, because we get this all the time, and I'm sure Mariana will add to this, but aircraft, we might have them here, and our intention is to fly them, and we need them on that. But for whatever reason, somebody's flying an illegal drone out there, and our aircraft get grounded. The winds are too high, and our aircraft can't go. Inversion layers have the smoke too thick. We can't fly. So they are getting paid that day to sit there. And we are constantly looking at those things. The finance team and the incident commander are talking every single day, and they're really looking at, do we need these assets? And every day, assets on every fire are changing. When we no longer, like Mariana had said, there's no longer an imminent threat to structures on East Evans, they are moving out. And we're still there because there's still a threat to the wildland, but we are still there. So there's a couple different things there. And Mariana, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, I would add that certainly after each fire, we do cost estimates. We share that with LFO, CFO, or legislators. Then in the winter, we go back and review every single fire to determine how close. We audit what we thought we were going to spend based on vendors, etc., and we make adjustments there. But I think one of the most interesting things, at least to me, that we've been able to do is demonstrate where these new tools that we've been able to access since 2020, this immediate response. So not waiting till a conflagration is called, but going to immediate response with the small surge packet of operations. We're able to show in the same conditions, in the same place in years prior, a $8 million fire, because we had to wait till conflagration and did not have access to air assets like we do now, pre-positioning air assets and immediate response. The goal of those are to keep fires small and away from communities. And where we've employed those and put them on the ground to protect communities at the request of the local fire chief, we actually have the data to show the efficacy of that. Where a fire that, like a substation fire, where unfortunately a landowner lost his life, it was like an $8 million fire. It was on the landscape for a month, I think about a month. The same exact fire, the same exact condition, using these new tools, kept a fire at 800 acres and less than $200,000. My goal is to ensure that we are using our resources appropriately in the right places, but get on a fire quick. Get on a fire before it becomes a conflagration, and get on a fire before it becomes a type 1 incident management type fire. And so those are the things that we're looking at. And to your point, we all have internal auditors. We constantly are talking with the legislature, and CFO, LFO will likely be at Ledge Days in September talking with you about these things. But yeah, a fire that doesn't start, a fire that's small, is going to save us all money in the end.
And I knew the answers to a lot of those things already, but I wanted, one of the things about this podcast, we don't work on hearsay. This podcast is about facts. And that's why I'm so happy that you guys came on tonight, because you're telling us things that, I've learned a lot tonight, and I think a lot of our audience has learned a heck of a lot too. We're gonna get ready to close here, because I don't want to take up again too much of your time. I do want to thank a few people. I want to thank Bob Murray Trucking, who is one of our local fire assets. Actually, he has bulldozers and trucks and you name it.
I actually have a message from him.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, Bob has a message.
He says, if anyone needs help with defensible space mitigation, we're the real McCoy. We have everything to eliminate fire fuel for the property and structural protection.
Yeah. Bob's great. He actually brings his D5 cat out and works on our ranch for us every year to help us with our mitigation. We fire trail our entire ranch, and our ranch is actually used for Type 6 engine training for the whole state. DPSST actually brings in crews and trains them, which is awesome. We love the fact that we don't get paid for that. That's all volunteer. We volunteer the land. They bring in the people to do the training, so it's really nice. Yeah. So I want to thank Bob Murray Trucking. I also want to thank Looking Glass Brewery, who is another one of our major sponsors. And I know Senator Brock Smith is on tonight. I think if he's still there. David, he's a good friend. He is also amazing when it comes to this type of work. Him, also Representative Court Boyce too. we all have a stake in the local wildfire business down here. I mean, it's something that we all are concerned about. Every darn summer we have to deal with this stuff. So I want to thank all of them. With that, I want to give you guys a chance to kind of close. If there's any messages that you'd like to share with us, let's just go ahead and start with Kacey.
Yeah, I guess I would just say thank you so much for having us here tonight, getting the facts out there. It is a complicated system, as you heard, but it really works. And it only works if we are looking at it, like Mariana said, from all three tiers and all three tenets of the national cohesive strategy. We're looking at, how do we create these resilient ecosystems? How do we create fire adapted communities? And how do we safe and effectively fight fire? And really appreciate the support of the legislature. There's been some really innovative movements Oregon has made. I had been looking in from Nevada and borrowing ideas for a long time, and really appreciate the resiliency funding for communities and the funding given to actually pay our bills more timely so that we can then turn around and get reimbursed more timely. So
yeah. I don't want to have a special session this year to go pay the fire bills, I hope. I hope I never have to do that again.
But yeah, so appreciate all that and appreciate the concern that folks have. We are here, we live in these communities. We care as much about the protection of the homes and these ecosystems as everyone here does. We love what we do for a living, and I would love no fire, but it's not a reality. So I really want to help us get to that mitigation and prevention and making sure that at least on the state forest side, we're the best we can be, and assisting our federal partners where we can on their federal forests that are in high risk areas. So thanks for having me, and Mariana, go take it away.
Thank you so much. Mariana, you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, first I just want to thank the men and women fighting fires on the lines tonight, and that will wake up tomorrow and do the same thing. It is the 21st of July, and I feel like we're fighting fire like the 21st of August, and that is our reality for the next month. So I just ask Oregonians to hold on, and at the end of the day, I know it's the people at home that allow the firefighters to do the work that they do. 20 years ago, I used to be able to camp and hunt with my husband around these times of years. He's a bow hunter, so we would go out early, and that doesn't happen anymore. And so I know that it's because of people like him and the families that are listening that do allow our firefighters to be out on the ground tonight. And the reality is there's just not enough firefighters in the West to deal with the kind of fires that we're seeing, and it takes everybody. And a firefighter is a firefighter is a firefighter. So thank you if you're helping support your firefighter, and thank you if you're a firefighter.
Thank you so much. And I want to say, not only thank you guys for coming on the program tonight, but thank you for being always willing to take my phone call. I mean, I literally can call you. Kacey, I haven't got to know you that well yet. I know with Mariana, I can call, I can send a text, and if she's not out on a fire somewhere, she'll respond like really quick. And that means the world to me, because I'm able to communicate and sometimes answer questions. And in fact, for that matter, sometimes just a matter of being able to know what's going on. So thank you so much. Representative Yunker, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, you kind of hit what I was going to hit. I called Kacey on Sunday, and she picked the phone up, and we started texting. I said, hey, I got these people wanting answers, and it's rough. People think that, Virgil, you and I work 24/7 as a legislator. We're part-time legislators. We don't make a lot of money. I'm not getting rich at being a representative. Trust me. But Kacey picked the phone up. Dave Brocksliff knows this. Last week we were with ODFW on some water level issues, and Debbie there picked up the phone up, the director there, ODFW. And I appreciate it, because not every director, every agency always picks the phone up and gets back to us. So when you do as directors and get back to us, it is really grateful, appreciated, because you guys are the experts. We're just the legislators. We're here for our people that live in our districts. We're either fighting for them or doing the right thing. We're hopefully doing the right thing. And I just appreciate that when you appreciate us and we appreciate you, and it's a good team effort and get things answered. And I know that's not always, you always want to talk to us, especially when it comes around money and things like that, or fixing things or doing things better, but I know we're going to have those conversations too, because that's how we get better, is having the tough conversations. So thank you very much.
You know, Dwayne, thank you. It's funny. You mentioned the working 24 hours. I got a message last night. I don't know, it was like 6 o'clock from the mayor of Drain with a question about something that ODOT was up to. So I said, well, you know, I'll work on it. So at about 7:30, I messaged the ODOT rep for this area down here, and he responded. You know, and by this morning we had an answer to the question. And that's what makes things work, right? I mean, we don't punch a clock, and we don't get paid by the hour. If we got paid by the hour, it'd be like we make about $3.50 an hour, right, for all the hours we work. But, you know, it's when we have good relationships with our agencies and with the agency heads, it makes us good. We're good representatives for the people that have the questions and the people that are affected by the things that we do. Trent, I know we have a meet and greet coming up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. So Saturday the 25th at Looking Glass Brewery, 5 p.m. We're going to have a meet and greet. You and Court and Alex Scott-Ottos, David Brock-Smith, Monique Spain will all be there. Some of you had questions tonight that really weren't in the wheelhouse of what we were talking about. That'll be the time for you to come down and ask these people those questions. If you know, and you can talk to them face to face. That's the whole idea of this meet and greet. Come down, get acquainted with your legislators, get to know who they are, ask them the tough questions, you know, and, you know, hopefully if they don't have, I know I've asked you questions, I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the golden opportunity for you, instead of going to somebody and go, well, what you need to do is, and well, you need to ask them yourself. This is your chance to ask them yourself. It'd be really cool if Dwayne could make it, but
I was just going to say, you know, Representative Yunker, you're kind of a hero in these parts.
Yeah.
You probably usurp me sometimes as being the most conservative person on the planet. So if you'd like to come, we always love having you.
Yeah, I know you invite me a lot. Hey, I can't help it. I'm so popular up there. I'm just super conservative. You're not. Yeah, I'm sorry, Virgil. I'm teasing you. Virgil and I sit next door to each other, next on the floor, and so it's funny because we're pretty much vote the same always, but somehow I'm more conservative than Virgil, as people think, so it's okay.
I think you could probably beat me in an election in Douglas County. You'd probably end up being elected. I don't know, but you know,
I might need those votes.
Did I say I said Looking Glass Brewery. So that's 1 block past the Cheetah on the left. If you get to the fire station, you went too far.
Yeah. Anyway, we'd love to have you, Dwayne. If you'd like to come up, I guess I didn't even think about inviting him, but it would make sense. So
yeah.
Anyway, if you're watching tonight or you know, you're interested in coming to one of those things, that is a time we are going to be there to answer questions. We're going to be there to just meet people. You know, I mean, we're not celebrities really. I mean, we're just people, and we just represent our folks, and we're always happy to. I'm always happy to talk to anybody, and I don't care. I'm not partisan when it comes to that kind of stuff. If it doesn't matter what you are, just don't call me names. That pisses me off. No, I'm just kidding. Not really. I get called a lot of names. It's okay. Okay. With that, we have several sponsors tonight that I really haven't shared a lot of screen time with, because I think the message tonight was super important. But we have Becky Holmes Insurance. She's with us still. We have Senator Brock-Smith, who I did mention his name. He is one of our major sponsors of this program. We don't do this. This program isn't free. We have to pay the folks to produce it for us. So we appreciate that. Also, our County Commissioner, Chris Boyce, is another one of our major sponsors as well. Again, Chris is running in November, and he does a great job down here. All of our commissioners, we always give them props because we really do appreciate the work they do. And it's a tough job to be a commissioner in Douglas County, and I'm sure in Josephine County too. I don't think I'm missing anybody else necessarily. Okay, so I want to thank our guest one more time tonight, Mariana, Casey, and of course Representative Yunker.
We did Bob Murray.
And we did Bob Murray. Yep.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. We thank you all for joining us. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out for the night and wish all of you a great week. And Mariana, keep us updated on the fires, Casey. And you guys be safe out there, right? I know that you're putting your necks on the line too sometimes when you go out to those fires. So be safe out there, and we hope to have you on again. So thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Thank you.